Ottawa, Illinois, 1922. The factory makes watch dials, the numbered faces of military timepieces. Each one must glow in complete darkness. Catherine Donohue is 22 years old. She sits at a long factory bench with 11 other women. The room smells of paint and something she cannot name. She dips a fine camel hair brush into a small jar of pale, luminous liquid. Undark, the manufacturer calls it, and brings the tip to her lips. Not because anyone told her to, because the brush needs a perfect point, because the foreman times their production, because this is what everyone does. She is paid by the dial. In the jar, radium. In her saliva, radium. In her teeth, her jaw, her spine, radium, though no one at the Radium Dial Company has mentioned this to her. What they have been told is that radium is good for you, that it puts colour in your cheeks. Catherine will be dead in 14 years. She will spend the final months of her life unable to lift her arm. She will spend them in court. This is her case file. In 1898, Marie Curie isolated radium for the first time. Within a decade, it was everywhere. Radium tonics, radium face cream, radium-laced chocolate. The early 20th century treated radioactivity not as a hazard, but as a vital force, a source of energy, youth, life itself. Clinics offered radium injections. Wealthy patients paid premium prices for the privilege. The element glowed, and the glow was taken as evidence that it worked. When the United States entered the First World War in 1917, the military needed precision instruments. Watches, compasses, and gauges readable in total darkness. The solution was luminous paint made with radium. Factories opened along the East Coast to meet the demand. The United States Radium Corporation established production in Orange, New Jersey. The Radium Dial Company opened in Ottawa, Illinois. Both hired young women, primarily from working-class families. The work paid well above the average industrial wage. The factory floors were considered clean, safe, respectable employment. The women painted their fingernails and teeth with the leftover paint for amusement. In the dark, they glowed. They found this funny. What the companies thought about this is documented in their internal records. Those records were not shared with the workers. The technique had a name: lip pointing. To maintain a fine brush at a precise tip, painters were trained to press it lightly against their lips before each stroke. It was faster than any alternative, more accurate. Supervisors demonstrated it on the floor. Each dial took seconds to complete. Each worker painted hundreds per day. In New Jersey, Grace Fryer was 18 when she started at the United States Radium Corporation. She was careful and efficient, one of the better workers on the line. She noticed after a while that her clothes seemed to catch the light, that the dust settled on her furniture and left a faint luminescence overnight. She did not find this alarming. No one did. At the Ottawa facility, a woman named Molly Magia was among the most productive painters in the building. In 1921, she developed a toothache. It did not resolve. By the following year, her jaw had begun to soften. Teeth loosened with minimal pressure. The bone beneath them had stopped holding its shape. A physician was brought in. He examined her. He recorded his diagnosis. Syphilis. The diagnosis was not medically supportable, but it served a function. Syphilis carried a moral charge that other diseases did not. A woman with syphilis was a certain kind of woman, unreliable, compromised, not the sort whose physical deterioration reflected on her employer. The company did not dispute the diagnosis. Molly Magia died in September 1922. She was 24. Her death certificate listed the cause as ulcerative stomatitis and anemia. The deaths continued. Women in both states presented with the same sequence: dental decay, jaw deterioration, pain migrating into the hips and spine, profound fatigue that worsened without apparent cause. A medical examiner in Newark named Harrison Martland began to collect data. By 1925, he had enough. He published his findings. The dial painters were absorbing radium into their bones. They were being destroyed from the inside. The company had known this was possible. Internal documents, entered into evidence years later, showed that executives at the United States Radium Corporation had access to scientific literature on radium's effects in laboratory animals as early as 1921. Supervisors wore protective gloves in certain sections of the building. The painters who worked there daily wore nothing. Arthur Roeder, the company's president, was aware of Martland's investigation before publication. He did not change the process. He did not tell the women. Instead, the company hired a man named Frederick Flynn. Flynn was introduced to the workforce as an independent academic researcher. He examined the New Jersey workers over nearly 2 years. He published his conclusions in peer-reviewed journals under his academic credentials. The women, he wrote, were in satisfactory health. There was no evidence of occupational poisoning. Flynn was on the company payroll throughout the study. His papers disclosed no financial relationship with the United States Radium Corporation. None of the journals that published his findings knew to ask. Grace Fryer learned about Martland's findings in 1927. Walking, by then, was difficult. She spent 2 years looking for legal representation. No firm in New Jersey wanted to bring a case against an industrial company with federal contracts and the resources to litigate for years. When she finally found a lawyer named Raymond Berry, 4 other women joined the suit. The newspapers called them the Radium Girls. 2 of them arrived at the first proceedings in wheelchairs. One could not lift her arm above her shoulder. The gallery was full. In Illinois, Catherine Donohue filed her suit against the Radium Dial Company in 1931. The company raised procedural objections at every stage. By 1935, when the trial began in earnest, Catherine could no longer sit upright. The judge transferred proceedings to her home on East Superior Street. Attorneys, court reporters, and witnesses gathered in her living room. Catherine lay on a settee and gave her testimony from there. She was asked whether she had knowingly consumed radium. She said she had done what she was trained to do. She said no one had told her what was in the paint. Radium-226, the specific isotope used in the paint, behaves almost identically to calcium inside the human body. This is the biological trap at the center of the case. The body cannot distinguish between the 2 elements. When radium enters the bloodstream, bone tissue absorbs it, as it would a mineral it needs. It accumulates in the skeleton, concentrating most heavily where metabolic activity is highest. In the dial painters, that meant the jaw, where years of lip pointing had delivered the highest concentration, and the hips and spine in those who had absorbed smaller doses over longer periods. Once fixed in bone, radium decays. The decay releases alpha particles, high-energy radiation that travels only a very short distance, but delivers its full force to whatever surrounds it. In this case, that is the bone itself. From inside, radium-226 delivers continuous radiation to the cells immediately adjacent to it. The bone loses density, then structure, then integrity. The medical term is radioactive osteonecrosis, the death of bone tissue caused by radiation originating within it. The jaw deteriorates first in cases of oral exposure. It does not fracture in the conventional sense. It softens, it becomes porous. In severe cases, it can be deformed by hand pressure. This is what the examining physician found when he saw Molly Maguire in 1922. He chose to write syphilis. Radium-226 has a half-life of 1,600 years. A half-life is the period required for half of a given quantity of a radioactive substance to decay into another element. After 1,600 years, half of the original radium remains active. After 3,200 years, a quarter. On any human timescale, the radium absorbed by the dial painters did not diminish at all. When Molly Maguire's body was exhumed in 1927, 5 years after her burial, her bones registered measurable alpha radiation. The body had become its own evidence. There was a further implication that no one in the litigation fully pursued at the time. The women had not kept their work at the factory. They had carried radium home on their clothing, their skin, their hair. Their houses had been dusted with it across years. The ground beneath the Ottawa factory had absorbed it across decades. The New Jersey case settled out of court in May 1928. Each of the 5 plaintiffs received $10,000, along with an annual medical stipend of $600 for the remainder of their lives. The settlement contained no admission of liability. The United States Radium Corporation did not acknowledge that the painting process had caused harm. 2 of the 5 women were dead within 5 years of the settlement. Grace Fryer died in 1933. She was 35. The Illinois case continued longer. The Radium Dial Company raised procedural challenges at every stage, delaying proceedings for years. In 1938, the Illinois Supreme Court ruled in Catherine Donohue's favor. The company responded by restructuring its assets under a new corporate name, Luminous Processes, placing the awarded compensation beyond straightforward collection. Catherine Donohue died the same year. She was 34. No executive of either company was criminally charged. Frederick Flynn continued his academic career without formal sanction. In 1978, the site of the Ottawa factory was tested. The ground was still radioactive. Soil had spread into the surrounding neighborhood over the intervening decades. Former workers' homes showed elevated contamination levels. The EPA classified the site and began remediation. The work continued into the 1990s. The bones of some workers, tested at exhumation, were still radioactive. The Radium Dial Company trained new painters while Catherine Donohue's case was still moving through the courts. The women who replaced her were not told about the lawsuits. They were not told what had happened to the women who sat at those benches before them. The company's legal strategy relied on one thing: the plaintiffs dying before the verdict. In several cases, it worked. There is a word for that. Leave it in the comments. The next case on this channel: a treatment, a death, and a physician who was never asked to explain himself. This is The Sealed Ward.